November 421 Sierra Charlie, Philly departure, ident, climb and maintain, let's see, you can climb and maintain 9 or 1,000. 1 Sierra Charlie, radar contact just west of Chester County, the altimeter 284, and you could just keep that left turn heading of 090.
Hello again everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are finally heading out once again in the iniBuilds A310. It's been quite some time since we last flew the aircraft. I certainly very much enjoyed the A310 on our last outing. And having come across this beautiful retro Delta livery, the opportunity to fly the A310 once again was, as I say, just too good to pass up. Our jet is currently on stand Alpha 16 at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. And we're going to be making a run up north towards Detroit, taking around 225 passengers on board with us for the flight. The initial cruise flight level will be flight level 370. It's a very cold day here on the ground in Atlanta, but otherwise the weather conditions are very nice. The weather conditions should be similar into Detroit later on this evening, although there may be a little bit more cloud around. We're departing late afternoon here out of Atlanta, so expecting a nighttime arrival later on this evening into Detroit. We haven't started boarding the passengers just yet, but we've sent off the block fuel now to the fuel truck. Today we're going to be uploading 14.4 tonnes of Jet A on board our A310. As always, I really hope you enjoyed the flight. If you do, then please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. We'll be boarding the passengers in around 20 minutes time, so let's head for the flight deck and we can begin setting the aircraft up for our departure. So, welcome back once again to the flight deck of the Airbus A310. As stated, we're currently on stand Alpha 16 here on the ground in Atlanta. We boarded the jet not too long ago. So far all we've done is get the battery masters selected on. We fired up the APU, and as you can see we've taken the APU bleed on there as well. Just trying to warm things up down the back at the moment. It's a very cold day outside in Atlanta, currently about minus 23 degrees Celsius. We've also just set the IRs through to align. That process is obviously going to take some time, and while we wait for those we'll continue on with our preliminary cockpit preparations. On the overhead, taking the no smoking signs through to auto. Seatbelt signs can go on. We've already got the jet fueled up. We've got 14.4 tonnes of fuel on board the aircraft, and that does concur with the flight plan. Working our way up through the hydraulics and flight controls panel. Everything looking good. The lights will take the strobes through to auto. Nav lights can go on to system 1. Pitch trims, we're just waiting on the aisles to align, so we'll have to leave those off for now. Yaw dampers can go on, same there for the auto throttles. We can override the galley shed now. Again, we've got the APU supplying electrical power. And working our way up through the electrical panel, everything looking good. We'll carry out an engine 1 fire test. Good test there on loop A. There's the engine fire warning. We do have a master warning there as well. And the handle illuminating correctly. There's the loop B fault, and the test is complete. Do the same on engine number 2.
8 right, taxi Echo, give way to the 717 Delta 2951.
Once again, we do have the master warning, the appropriate ECAM, fire handle illuminated correctly, and there's the loop B fault, and again the test is complete. So fire test has been carried out for the wipers, leaving those both off now of course. APU is selected on, start masters are off, ignition is off. In terms of the fuel, as discussed, we've got 14.4 tonnes of fuel on board the jet, about 4.2 in each of the inner wing tanks. That's about 8.4, and 3 tonnes in each of the outers, so another 6. That does equal 14.4. The fuel pumps, we'll get all of those selected on. So firstly the trim tank pumps, centre tank pumps, inner wing tank pumps, and the outer wing tank pumps. Just continuing up through the overhead, we'll leave the pressurization system as is. The window heats can go on, and same there as well for the probe heats. For oxygen is selected on, and just for the cockpit door there as well, currently showing open. And sure enough, as you can see, we've got the door open here currently for anybody that needs to come into the flight deck. And RC, just working our way through the right hand side of the overhead, we'll set the emergency exit lights through to arm. Anti-HOTAS lights will leave on bright, APU bleed is selected on. And we can leave the bleed and the conditioning panels as they are. We'll leave the temperature selectors in auto.
Just park to the ramp, Southwest 3124.
Down to the forward main instrument panel, we'll set the altimeters. QNH today 1019. It's about 3009 inches of mercury. So we've got 3009 there on the left altimeter. Same there on the standby. And on the right, aerodrome elevation 1000 feet. That does concur with the aerodrome elevation here at Atlanta. There's working our way through the panel. The brake anti-skid switch is selected to normal and on. In terms of the aircraft doors, you can see we've currently got the L1 and L3 doors selected open for the boarding of the passengers in just a moment's time. And we've got both the forward and the aft cargo, as well as the bulk cargo doors currently open in preparation for loading the cargo. The landing elevation into Detroit, that's going to be 645 feet. It's about 650 set there on the landing elevation selector. And for the flex temperature, we'll be carrying out a flex takeoff today. We can't set that though, again, until we've got the aisles aligned with the pitch channels selected on. So we'll come back to that later. Landing gear handle is selected down. We've got 3 greens. We'll come back to the MCDUs in just a moment. Spoilers are stowed. The parking brake is set. Comm radios and the ADFs are set as required. Thrust levers are idle. Engine masters are selected off. Transponder in standby for the time being. For the ECAM, we'll just take a look through at the engine page. And you can see there we've got 20 quarts of oil in each engine. Coming on to the hydraulics page. And the hydraulic quantities are checked. In terms of the aircraft status, everything normal there.
191 Delta 2951 fit.
And at the moment, there on the memos, we've got the APU running, parking brake is set, seatbelts on, no smoking signs on, expecting to see all of those. Rudder trim is set neutral, weather radar is off. And just coming back up to the FCU. For the EFA selections, we'll go on to constraints on both the left and the right. We'll leave ourselves in map 15 for the time being. Given that the IRs have now had quite a bit of time to align, we'll see whether or not we can take the pitch channels on. Doesn't look like we can just yet, so we'll come back to that in a moment. In the meantime, then we can come down to the MCDU and start setting that up for the flight. So, align IRS, we can clear that message for the time being. Nav accuracy downgraded, we'll clear that as well. In terms of the aircraft status then, we are an Airbus A310-300. Got the CF6 AT engines fitted to the aircraft. And the active nav database, 10th of August through to the 7th of September, so that's current. On the init page, firstly, filling in the from and to fields, we're departing out of Atlanta, Kilo Alpha Tango Lima. And once again, we're bound for Detroit, Kilo Delta Tango Whiskey. We'll hit return. The alternate for the flight today is Chicago O'Hare, so Kilo Oscar Romeo Delta. And once again, hitting return. In terms of the lat long position, that is correct versus our current stand. So we can align the IRSs based off that. The cost index today for the flight is 34. Cruise flight level 370 per the flight plan. Initially we'll be making a step climb later on. And the flight ID is Delta, so Delta Alpha Lima 2505. In terms of the temperature and tropopause, we'll leave that as is for the time being. We'll leave that in its default state. The cruise winds for our flight today, 342 at 37.
Number 5332, Atlanta ground, runway 8 right, taxi Echo.
8 right, the Echo, number 5332.
Next on to the flight plan page. So departing out of Atlanta, for the SID we're going to be departing off runway 08 right.
Runway 3 Atlanta ground, taxi Lima to ramp 4.
And it's going to be the Paget 2 departure with a Smith transition. We'll insert that. Working our way through the flight plan from waypoint Smith, we're going to be taking the Quebec 67 airway out towards Henderson, which is Hotel November. And then from Henderson, we're going to be joining on to the arrival thereafter in towards Detroit. So we'll select Detroit, insert the star. We're going to be expecting a landing here on runway 22 left. We'll take the ILS. going to be the Hot Rod 2 arrival, which has to be one of the coolest sounding stars that I've ever heard of. There's the Hot Rod 2. We'll be coming in with a subway transition via waypoint puzzle. And once again we can insert all of that. So just briefly working our way through the flight plan page, making sure that the waypoints are checked against the paper flight plan. So out towards waypoint Smith off the Paget 2, you can see then the Quebec 67 out towards Henderson, and then the flight plan has us from Henderson towards waypoint Subway onto the Hot Rod 2 arrival.
Atlantic ground, you got 206 back with you on Echo for 5.
Then vectors, and then picking up waypoint puzzle, expecting the ILS for runway 22 left.
2700 Atlantic ground, Fox to 2.
The secondary will just make a copy of the active. Onto the init B page, so block fuel, as discussed, 14.4 tons. Working in metric here today, which is a little bit unusual for the States. Zero fuel weight for the aircraft is 110.7 tons. That's giving us a takeoff gross weight based on a taxi fuel of 0.4 tons, 124.7. Flight plan has 124.6. Cruise flight level above max flight level, we'll clear that and just investigate there. So max flight level at our current weight, according to the aircraft, is 367. Flight plan gave us flight level 370, but we'll just change that. We'll go for the next lower level. So cruising initially at flight level 350.
Ground is 2467, Mike for 4.
The zero fuel weight CFG is 24.5. And you can see now optimum flight level 359 versus 350, so we're pretty good there in terms of cruise flight level. And we do have our weights inserted. Onto the takeoff approach page then, V1 for the flight today, we've already calculated the V speeds. That's going to be 155. VR is going to be 157.
Now Delta 21, 27-4 South, Vector taxi please.
V2 is a speed of 161, we'll enter that up on the FCU later on. And once again it's going to be a Flex 57 takeoff, but again we'll just wait until those IRs are aligned. Then we can engage the autopilot pitch channels up on the overhead, and finally we can start setting up the FCU. Whilst we wait on that then we'll brief up the departure. So once again it's going to be the Paget 2 departure off runway 08 right. Let's plate 10-3 Hotel. It's an RNAV SID, and we don't currently have nav primary, but expecting to see that in just a moment of time. In terms of the departure itself then, it's departing initially runway heading of 095, again we'll set that on the FCU. So 095 to intercept the 082 course, inbound towards waypoint Ronnie. After Ronnie we're going to be making a left turn out towards the north, initially to waypoint Hoyt, and we have a speed restriction there of 250 knots until waypoint Hoyt, and of course below 10,000 feet. In terms of the terrain, noticeably there the aerodrome elevation is 1,000 feet. MSA around the field is only 3,100, so no significant terrain in towards the field, but later on our departure track, as you can see we do have some higher terrain. Up to around 4,200 feet there, the highest grid Mora 7,800. In terms of the weather, it's actually a very nice day here for the departure. It is very cold outside as we've discussed, minus 23 degrees. No moisture or precipitation around though, so no icing conditions anticipated really throughout the flight. We do have a little bit of high level cloud later on. We've catered for that as well with the takeoff performance data, no engine anti-ice factored in there with our calculation. Other notes for the departure, the transition altitude is 18,000 feet, pretty typical here for the States. We need to accelerate straight away up to 250 knots. If unable, we'll advise the tower, that's not going to be an issue for us today. In terms of the acceleration, it's going to be a slats 15, flaps 15 departure. So you can see acceleration altitude there, 2,500 feet. It's 1,500 feet above aerodrome elevation. Once we're above 1,500, accelerating through F speed, initially we'll go towards slats 15 only. And then once we're above S speed, accelerating towards green dot, which today is 225 knots. We'll retract the slats, clean up the aircraft. Initial stop height 10,000 feet, we'll select that on the FCU. And lastly, just in terms of the taxi, so once again currently on stand Alpha 16. We're going to be pushing back here onto the ramp. Just pushing straight back, later on it'll be a left turn out, we'll take taxiway Echo. Very short, simple taxi for us today, so right onto Echo, left onto Hotel, and then it's going to be a full-length departure off runway 08 right. As you can see, the IRs have now aligned. We have GPS primary, so we can take those autopilot pitch channels on. We'll continue the setup here of the FCU and the last few items here in the cockpit. The passenger boarding should commence very shortly. I'll come back to you once we're done with that. We've got the aircraft closed up and we are ready for the push and start.
Welcome aboard, and thanks for flying with us. We're committed to making your flight safe and comfortable. So before we depart, we'll be showing a brief safety presentation. This information can help you if there's an emergency, so it's important to pay close attention, even if you are a frequent flyer.
All carry-on items should now be stored securely, either in an overhead bin or under the seat in front of you. And all aisles, exits, and bulkhead areas should be clear. Your mobile phones and other electronic devices should be turned off. Once airborne, we'll let you know when you can use approved electronic devices. But note that some items, such as phones, may not be used in flight.
Okay, so we now have everybody on board the aircraft. As you can see, we've got all of our doors closed up. The jet bridge is now disconnected. With that in mind then, we'll take the beacon on. Take the transponder on here as well. Part brake can come off in anticipation of the push. The tug already connected to the aircraft. We just held the before start checklist in its entirety for now, just so we can run through that together. So for the before start checks, the cockpit preparation is complete. Gear pins and covers have been removed. Signs are on and auto. Adders are set through to nav. Fuel quantity, we have 14.3 tons of fuel now on board the jet versus 14.4 on the flight plan. Just slightly down there because of the APU fuel burn. The takeoff data, we have a V1 155, VR 157, V2 161. Again, that's now selected on the FCU. And we have a flex temp for the takeoff today of 57 degrees. Power ref, we have a QNH of 3009 set there on all three altimeters. The windows and doors
127 monitor tower 119.36
are closed. The beacon is on. Thrust levers are idle. The part brake is off. And that is the before start checklist complete. So we'll start the number one engine first. We'll come through to System A on the ignition for the outbound sector towards Detroit. And we'll hit the engine 1 starter. Start valve showing open. We do have N2 rotation.
9 left, Mike 2 behind the 7-1, off our left, Delta 1478.
And as usual, just keep an eye on the pushback here as we go. We're going to be taxiing out off the left wing today, as we discussed, onto the apron initially. Up through 20%. So the engine 1 master will take on. There's M1 rotation. Engine oil pressure coming up. And we do have Horizon EGT, so a good light off.
Round up to 1620, joining Lima for ramp 4.
And looking good here now in terms of the push. So we'll have the tug disconnect, part brake can go back on.
So 1620 line ground taxi to Lima ramp 4.
Lima ramp 4, Delta 1620.
And just waiting here on the number 1 to stabilise. Bit of a jump there in N2. Slightly unusual. There goes the tug. And good start on number 1. So same process on number 2. Showing start valve open.
Ground control, top of the morning to you. Southwest 3193, coming to 3 south, taxi.
Good rotation there on the N2. And again, just wait until we're up through 20%. Okay, so there's 20%. Engine 2 master selected on.
About 1478 monitor tower 119.3.
We do have N1 rotation, engine oil pressure coming up. And there's the light off. So we'll just wait here, again, waiting for engine number 2 to stabilise. Just keep an eye on that N2 there as well, see if we get the same jump as we saw on the number 1 engine. I wonder if that's not a little modelling quirk of the aircraft, given that we're operating at pretty low temperature here today.
Ground Delta 2384, joining Lima for 1.
Delta 2384 line ground taxi to Lima to 1.
And again, we do see that leap in the N2, but it should come back towards the normal value in just a moment. Anyway, we do have 2 good starts. So the ignition master can go off. Take the APU bleed off. And the APU master switch there as well can go off. We'll start the chrono. just here for the engine warm-up. We need 5 minutes there before takeoff. Again, it's going to be a very short taxi, so we may have to hold briefly down at the holding point. In the meantime, the rudder trim has been reset. The stab trim, we're looking for 1.4 units nose up. The stab trim is set. Speed brakes are armed, and again for the takeoff is going to be slats 15, flaps 15, so that's selected. And we'll just wait here until that's indicated.
558 on the ground, runway 8 right, taxi via Echo.
Taxi via Echo for 8 right, Delta 558.
So the flaps and slats indicating correctly. As it is a very short taxi here, we're actually going to carry out the flight control check before we depart. Just ahead of that though, we'll run through the after start checklist. So anti-ice, once again not required here with the current ground conditions, despite the temperature. ECAM status is checked. We'll just check the doors page here as well. And you can see we do have all of our slides armed. Pitch trim, we have 1.4 units nose up. Rudder trim is 0. That is the after start check is complete. As I say, we'll carry out the flight control check. It's going to be a very short taxi down to 08 right. So we're full up, full down, and neutral, full left, full right, and neutral. And on the rudder, ordinarily of course we'd depress the rudder disconnect push button here, but we have full left, full right, and neutral. So we'll get rid of the flight control page once again. We'll just hold off on the weather radar here till we've cleared the apron. We'll take the auto brake through to max, and in preparation for the taxi, the runway turn-off lights can go on. Those lights can go through to taxi. We are all clear on the right. Take the park brake off, and clear on the left. The aircraft actually moving here under idle thrust, which is always nice to see. So once again, it's going to be a very straightforward taxi for us here today. We'll just taxi straight ahead, second right onto Echo, and then first left onto Hotel for a full length departure off of runway 08 right.
The 2983 at the approach end, cross runway 9 left to wind Lima ground, 0.75, good day.
The Lima, and the joint Lima contact ground, Delta 2983.
Place to Atlanta Tower, right line of point.
Visual 9 right.
Delta 1841 Atlanta Tower, wind 090 at 8, runway 9 right, clear to land.
Clear to land, 9 right, Delta 1841.
Sub 6 Tower, Charlie cross, runway 8 left, short of 8 right.
Okay, so as you'll have seen, we are now lined up here on runway 07 right. The aircraft is set and ready to go. We'll just run through the before takeoff checklist. So the flight controls have been checked, the flight instruments are checked, the briefing is confirmed. For the flap setting, once again we have slats 15, flaps 15 selected and indicated, and that is what the takeoff data is based on. The V-speeds and thrust, we have V1 155, VR 157, V2 of 161, and a flex of 57 degrees. Transponder is set through to TARA. The ECAM memo, that's checked. The takeoff config is normal. Below the line, the cabin crew have been advised the engine mode selector is set through to ignition off. The packs are selected on. That is the before takeoff checklist complete. No, park brake off. Coming up on the thrust levers, initially we'll set 40% on the M1s.
2467 at Sierra, cross runway 9 left, join Mike, and ground, 0.75, good day.
Delta 2467.
Delta 485, connect departure on 133.47, have a good day.
And the engines are stable. Take off. So we have thrust, SRS heading on the FMA. Looking for 89.4% N1 for takeoff thrust. And thrust is set. There's 100 knots. And we have V1 rotate. Back on the yoke. And we now have nav, positive climb, gear up. And now just waiting to up through 1500 feet, we'll come back to climb thrust. Again, aerodrome elevation is 1000 feet, so it's going to be 2500 feet. As I say, we'll come back to climb thrust, we'll go into profile climb, and we can start retracting the flaps and slats. There's 2500. There's profile thrust, profile climb. We'll bring the thrust back into auto.
So the 1841, let's do kilo then. Cross runway 9 left and Lima to 8, call the ramp tower and have a good day.
And speed is checked, we're above F speed, accelerating now towards S speed, so we'll go slats 15.
Alright, cross 9 left at kilo, cross the ramp and on Lima, Delta 1841, see ya.
And up through 3500 feet. Just waiting now till we come up through S speed.
Tower Delta 2384 on the visual, 9 right.
Delta 2384 Atlanta Tower, wind 110 at 8, runway 9 right, clear to land.
Clear to land, 9 right, Delta 2384.
And up through S speed, so speed checked. There's flap 0. And climbing away nicely now. Take autopilot 1. And we do have command 1, accelerating up towards 250 knots as per the restriction later on. So slats and flaps are retracted. Take the runway turn-off lights off. And the nose light off. We can disarm the spoilers. Running through the after takeoff checks, the gear is up, flaps are up. Packs are on.
2219, contact us at Landing Center, 134.2, have a good day.
And just holding the checklist there, we just got the altimeters left there in terms of the checklist items, up through 6,000 feet. And still accelerating here up towards 250 knots. Getting about 2,500 feet per minute rate of climb out of the aircraft, so pretty decent climb performance. And approaching waypoint Ronnie. We'll come out on the range now on the nav display. After that, again, we're going to be making a left turn out towards the north, towards waypoint Hoyt. On the ECAM memo there, just showing landing light extended. We'll get those off at 10,000 feet. And just approaching 250 knots, so maintaining that speed now. Initially through 10,000, but with the waypoint restriction there at Hoyt as well, we're going to have to maintain 250 knots, a little bit longer than usual. We'll centre up the heading bug. Another little item in the Airbus, produced in the 310, which seems awfully unnatural. So, commencing that turn out towards the north. Absolutely beautiful down there on the ground coming out of Atlanta. Lovely evening conditions here as well. And you can hear the thrust rolling off now as we approach 10,000 feet and 250 knots. The initial stop height again 10,000 as we briefed earlier on. And you can see downtown Atlanta there off the left wing. We'll get the landing lights off.
Delta 2656, just maintain 7,000.
About another 10 miles to run here towards Hoyt. We'll assume ATC is now cleared us high speed and climb flight level 250.
Southwest 3124, left approach 226 right.
So we'll select 250.
Delta 2656, can approach 127.25.
We're going to level change. It's 250. And again, free speed now, so we'll start accelerating.
Approach good afternoon, Twilight 5 with you, 13,000 to be Andre at 250 knots information hotel.
There's 300 knots selected. So at 300 knots, 250 there, out armed on the FMA, up through 10,000. We'll cycle the signs. And track to waypoint Hoyt, then turning out towards the northwest. Unfortunately not the best view today of the city centre. Fairly hazy conditions, with the sun there as well getting fairly low on the horizon. A little bit tricky to make out Atlanta itself. Hopefully though we should get a pretty beautiful view later on as we approach Detroit. It's going to be getting fairly late on in the evening.
1546, just maintain 12,000.
Alright, descending 12,000 for Delta 1546.
Just down the progress page for now on the MCDU, so cruise flight level 350, rec max is now 370. Optimum 36, we'll stay down at 35 for the time being. There's our turn over Hoyt. So we are good now in terms of any restrictions. We'll come back into profile climb. And you can see there we have profile thrust, profile climb, the aircraft accelerating now up towards 320 knots. So again, lovely clear conditions overall, no need for the engine anti-ice currently. There is a little bit of high level cloud, but I suspect by the time we get up there, there's not going to be any real conditions for icing. The TAT minus 33 degrees Celsius currently.
Twilight 5, just maintain 9,000.
Twilight 5 down to 9,000.
So nice smooth conditions at the moment. We'll let the passengers up. And we'll just continue here now in the climb. You can see the E-high terrain that we discussed there during the briefing, just off the nose. So climbing today up to flight level 350 initially. There'll be a step climb most likely later on. About an hour and 15 in the air today to get us up towards Detroit. Hopefully some nice conditions as well for us en route, with the sun just starting to set as we approach the city of Detroit itself. So as usual, we'll make the most of that. We can enjoy the scenery here as we cruise our way up north. And then we'll return to the flight deck just as we're approaching our top descent point for Detroit.
Target 2109, you climb maintain 2000. Flagship 507, you can go direct to Medina. Rate $268, was that you checking in? Number $68, what approach did you want in Chester County? American 2109, turn left direct TB. 3626 Juliet, Philly approach the altimeter 2984. Number 7161 Golf, Philly approach the altimeter 2984. You know what? If you want to stay on a 270 heading for about 20 more miles and then go to Delaware, that'll be fine too. So just, you want to do that? Alright, heading 270, let me know when you can take a turn northwest back. American 2109, contact Washington Center 127.7. Yeah, just fly heading 090, maintain 4,000. I do have a departure coming off of Chester County climbing a 3. ExitJet 555, Philly with me? ExitJet 555, expected GPS runway 29 at Chester County. Yeah, I'll tell you what, you get the weather, you let me know what approach you want there. Just fly heading 340, I'll blow for you here in a minute. November 421 Sierra Charlie Philly departure, ident, climb and maintain, let's see, you can climb and maintain 9 or 1,000. 1 Sierra Charlie radar contact just west of Chester County, the altimeter 284, and you can just keep that left turn heading of 090.
So, good evening and welcome back to the flight deck of the A310. We're just approaching waypoint Colts, which as you can see pretty much coincides with our top of descent point as well, so we'll configure the aircraft here for the descent. Initially we're going to be descending down to 12,000 feet. There's 12,000 foot set there on the FCU. We'll go for a profile descent, so we have profile speed, profile descent, and 120 armed. As you can see, the aircraft just commencing the descent on the vertical profile.
I'll have that here for you shortly, I just gotta get you lower first.
Now that we've descended, we'll brief up the approach, both the star and the ILS, and then we can configure the A310 thereafter. Just coming through the tops of the clouds here, so before we brief, we'll just take the engine anti-ice on. You can see there's a little bit more cloud around than there was coming out of Atlanta, but nothing too significant. It's a fairly thin cloud layer, we'll be below it in just a moment's time. Shouldn't be too bumpy either, so we'll leave the seatbelt signs off for now. So in terms of the briefing then, once again we are flying the Hot Rod to RNAV arrival, as we expected coming out of Atlanta. Let's plate 10-2 Golf. It's an RNAV SID, and GPS is primary. Just coming over waypoint Colts, which is already on the arrival starting at waypoint Subway. We have various speed and altitude restrictions on the way down. Firstly, waypoint Buchan, we need to be back at 280 knots and below flight level 270. Waypoint Fire, we need to be above flight level 200. Kraken again back at 280 knots below flight level 210. After that we have waypoint Beer below flight level 150 or 15,000 in this case. And then waypoint Hot Rod at 250 knots, 12,000 feet. Then making a turn out towards the northeast on a left-hand downwind for runway 22 left. We've got waypoint Model T, we need to be back at 210 knots, and again 12,000 feet. After Model T it's going to be vectors for the ILS. Again at the moment expecting an approach onto runway 22 left. In terms of the ILS itself then, anticipating 22 left at the moment. Let's plate 11-6. Frequency is 110.7. Final approach course is 216. The aerodrome elevation 645 feet. Cat 1 MDA of 837. And for this approach it's climbing to 4,000 feet. Initially on runway heading of 216. Inbound towards the Charlie Romeo Lima VOR on the 025 radial. And ultimately taking up the hold at 4,000 feet. Transition level in the States 18,000 or flight level 180. In terms of the terrain, no significant really coming into Detroit. Again, the aerodrome elevation 645, the MSA only 2,800 feet. Otherwise, nice conditions, cab okay on the ground. Again, we've just got a bit of light cloud coverage on the way down, coming through about flight level 330 currently. Cold temperatures again about minus 20 degrees, QNH is 1010. And the wind swung around a little bit now, it's out from the southwest, as you'd expect for runway 22. In terms of the landing then, we'll just briefly talk through that, then we'll set the aircraft up. So planning on landing 22 left. We're going to be using idle reverse, auto brake low. On the 310 we'll have to select that later on. We're carrying Chicago O'Hare as the alternate today. And we need 5.4 tons for O'Hare. Expecting to have the aircraft on the ground with 7.3, so about an extra 2 tons, 1.9 tons extra. A little bit over 20 minutes of extra fuel, which is exactly what we calculated. We planned a contingency of 20 minutes. So in terms of the aircraft setup, we'll firstly tune up the ILS, that's on a frequency of 110.7.
You're going to chop, okay, MedStar 2, you're clear to the Bravo airspace on board.
And the course 216. So just coming down through flight level 300. That means we need about 120 miles to run. We're showing 90 direct to the field. And about 140 in terms of flight plan distance. As you can see. So nicely on profile at the moment, bang on our VDEV. And we are going to meet our restriction at waypoint Buchan. There's 110.7, 216. Coming on to the takeoff approach page. The MDA, once again, is 837.
With jet 555, descend and maintain 4,000.
We don't need to arm up final approach just yet. We've got slats 30, flaps 40 selected for the landing. The approach 141 knots. No wind correction for now. The wind's only up at around 10 knots, and we've got a green dot there of 236. Come back onto the progress page for the time being. That's the aircraft pretty much set up, configured for the approach. Speed should start reducing momentarily to meet the speed restriction at waypoint Buchan, just coming back through 300 knots. Flight level 280, so the next steps in our process. Coming down through flight level 200, we'll get the seatbelt signs on, get the passengers sat down, and through 180 we'll come back onto the QNH, which again is currently 1020 in Detroit.
70 heading's good, yeah, and I'll get you on course here in a little bit. You're number 2 from Pottstown. I'll tell you what, you can deviate as necessary on your way to 4,000 when able, get right to FECO or the field, whichever's easier for you. I don't really have anybody in your way, so whatever you need to do is fine. Remember, 1 Sierra Charlie, climb 1810,000. You're just going to exceed 250 knots for now. I'll get you high here in just a second.
Okay, so we're just coming over Lake Erie. We've got the US-Canadian border out towards the east. Currently maintaining 12,000 feet, holding 250 knots for the time being to meet our restriction at waypoint Hot Rod. We should be making a right turn in just a moment's time to track out towards the northeast. And that's going to put us, as discussed, on a left-hand downwind for the ILS runway 22 left. So there goes the turn. You can see we've got the city of Detroit there, just passing off our 1 o'clock, and we've got the airfield there just off the nose. We'll assume that ATC is now trying to cut us in, so we're cleared for an unrestricted descent down to 3,000 feet.
United 1632, taxi Alpha Victor, hold short, runway 6 left.
We'll maintain 250 knots for now. And we're in level change, so we have retard, speed, out-armed, and 3,000. Also thrusters armed. As you can see, we're going to be flying straight over Detroit itself. And as I say, in for a left-hand downwind on runway 22 left, which is just over the other side of the terminals. So we'll hold 250 knots for now, keep our descent rate up. And again, we're going to be cut in here, so we'll increase that descent rate, we'll take the speed brake.
T47, connect 5,000 day.
There's 11,000 feet, so we need about 33 miles currently to be on profile for the glide slope. At the moment, only 10 miles out from the field, 61 miles there on the flight plan, but that's obviously inaccurate. We're not going to be flying the entire profile. We'll center up the heading bug once again. We'll come into heading select. And again, we're going to be under ATC vectors here. We'll probably cut in around waypoint Rouge. There's 10,000 feet. We'll get the landing lights on. We can cycle the seatbelt signs. And it's getting pretty dark outside now, so we'll dim the lights, rig for silent running. 10,000, speed 250 knots, so we're good there on the speed for now. We'll start reducing speed around 7,000 feet. You can see currently at the moment we're going to be levelling off at 3,000 around waypoint Oscar. That's looking pretty good. We do want to fly just past Rouge, and then we'll come back direct to the waypoint. Just flying slightly past the waypoint is going to give us a more reasonable intercept angle. So happy with where we are in terms of the configuration for now. Again, just keeping that speed up for another 1,000 feet or so. So there's Detroit off the left wing. Running through the approach checklist. The briefing is confirmed, ECAM status is checked, seatbelt signs are on. The barrier F, we have a QNH of 3012 set there on the left primary, same on the standby, and same on the right primary. The MDA, again just on the takeoff approach page, we have an MDA of 837 feet. And for the engine mode selector, once again we'll leave that off. We've got nice conditions here coming into Detroit. That's the approach checklist complete. We'll just come back onto the progress page for now. Down through 7,000, we'll start reducing our speed. Come back towards green dot initially, so 220 knots. We'll leave the speed brakes out for now. We'll take slats 15. just to get our speed back through green dots. We'll reduce further. We want our speed back at 180 knots before we commence the turn. So we'll aim to make the turn into slats 15, flaps 15 config. There's 220. Speed is checked, and slats 15. So 6,000 feet, 18 miles would be on the glide slope, and about 8 miles out still from the field. Again, we can intercept the ILS from Rouge at 3,000. They're still happy with where we are in terms of profile. And in fact, we can get rid of the speed brake now. We'll obviously lose some altitude as well here in the turn. Almost coming up for being waypoint Rouge. And approaching 5,000, so we'll get the speed back. We'll go for 190 initially. Planning on 180, but we'll need to take flat before we configure further.
353 tower 12308, runway 22 left line of way, traffic will cross downfield.
And speed is checked, we'll go flaps 15. There's 180 selected.
3208, Alpha, go back approaching Tango, call Alpha.
And 5,000 feet. We've got another 2,000 foot to lose. Just coming on the range. And approaching being waypoint Oscar, so we'll start the turn. And if we're still a little bit high, we can take the speed brake again. Should be okay, so direct to waypoint Rouge, which we have. We'll insert that. Coming back into nav. And showing 15 miles to run. So looking good now in terms of vertical profile. We can start reducing that descent rate. We'll go with VS minus 500 for now. We can refine that in just a moment. So we have VS and out blue. 1,000 foot to go. Down through 4,000, we'll see the cabin crew. Looks like we're picking up the glides. Auto thrust a little bit slow there in terms of picking up the speed. We've actually dropped nearly 20 knots, so that's not done a particularly great job. We are coming back towards 180. And we're showing about 14 miles to run now, so we'll hold 180 till around 7 DME. The 4,000 feet, we need about 12 miles. We're just ever so slightly low, but very quickly coming back onto that. Everything looking good in terms of the profile. Again, 3,000 foot of waypoint Rouge. We'll come onto the takeoff approach page again. We'll arm up final approach. And we'll come into ILS. We are picking up both the loc and the glide. 11 miles to run. We'll assume the ILS has been identified. Just increase that vertical speed again, make sure we don't get high on the glide slope. And we are clear for the approach, so we'll arm up land. Take autopilot 2. So glide slope loc blue, cat 3, and showing autopilot 1 and 2.
Warrior 302 Foxtrot Golf with you at 3,500 level.
Golf Metro Tower, did you get a Bravo clearance from your post controller?
Down through 3,500. As you can see, still looking good there on the glide.
So 302 Foxtrot Golf.
And again, just giving a slightly higher descent rate here to make sure that we do reach waypoint Rouge on the loc before we capture the glide slope. We'll hold the gear for another mile. There's out star.
1632 traffic holds in position at Victor 92 left.
Surprised we went into outstar quite so early there with a fairly low descent rate. We'll keep a good eye on that because we don't want to level off here and shoot through the glide slope. Looks like we should be okay. We'll get loc star in just a moment. The aircraft just porpoising a little bit there as well. I've noticed that does seem to happen quite a bit with the iniBuilds A310.
2697 tower 1230 at 8, runway 22 left line.
So there's 8 miles. We'll take the gear down. Hopefully we're going to see loc star and glide slope star imminently here.
Jet 26, Metro Tower, wind 2206, runway 21 left to left.
So we do have glide slope star, Loke star.
Round 21 left, for Jet 26.
The missed approach altitude, as discussed, is 4,000. We have go around altitude 4,000 set. Gears down, we have 3 greens. We'll take auto brake low. Arming up the spoilers. Nose light through to take off. And we'll take the runway turn off lights as well. Speed can come back now towards 160 knots.
2697, I have to stand, runway 22 left for the takeoff, wind 2108.
There's 160 selected. We'll go flaps 20.
1 Metro Tower, runway 22 left, 108, wind 2107.
Nicely lined up here with runway 22 left. On the glide, on the Loke. Just going back towards 160. We'll take flaps 40. And there's 5 miles. We'll come back towards the approach. The approach now 139.
425 Metro Tower, wind 2207, runway 21 left to left.
So for the landing checklist, the cabin crew have been advised the auto thrust is speed. For the ECAM memo, we have landing gear down, 3 greens, signs are on, spoilers, just double check there, spoilers are armed, and the flaps, we have slats 30, flaps 40 indicated. That is the landing checklist complete. So again, nicely established here on the RLS. Shortly coming up on 1,000 feet. And there's 1,000. We are stable. We'll take out the auto thrust first. We're looking for about 65% on the M1.
And November 2, Foxtrot Golf, descending is going to be a far 0 below 2,500.
For 2,500, 302 Foxtrot Golf.
4621 on at the stand, runway 22 left for the takeoff.
Now we'll disconnect the autopilot. Just before we do that, we'll just dim down the BFD a little bit there. So disconnecting.
Spirit winds 960, Metro Tower, runway 22 left, 1.8, wind 2004.
They're looking good on speed, looking good on the profile. And looking at our wind vector there, the wind pretty much straight down the runway, about 8 knots. So nicely established, just coming through 500 feet on the rad out. There's 400.
That's 2566 Metro Tower, wind 21042 and left to left.
310 definitely feels a little bit better to hand fly than I recall from our previous flight, so it's nice to see that iniBuilds done a little bit more work there. Speed's good. Vertical speed around 700 feet per minute. Nicely on the glide. No pappy there, so a little bit trickier to see the touchdown zone. Back off the thrust levers. There's touchdown. Just lowering the nose wheel onto the runway. Plenty of runway here, 122 left, so we'll just go with idle reverse. And for now, just letting the auto brake slow the aircraft down. You can see Yankee 4 there, just coming up on the left. Just down through 70 knots. So we'll go manual braking, cancel the reversers, and we'll vacate off to the left. Okay, so just vacated Yankee 4. We'll get the lights configured. Strobes can go back to auto. Nose light can go back through to taxi. We'll get the landing lights off. We'll start up the APU. We can disarm the spoilers. Start retracting the flaps.
Ground Delta 352 south with whiskey.
And the weather radar can go off. TCAS can go off.
Delta 350 ground, then I left Mike 2, taxi via Lima to Lima 1.
With the aft landing checklist, the flaps are retracting, spoilers are disarmed, APU is starting, and the radar is off. That is the aft landing check is complete. So we're just going to continue here down Romeo. We'll then be pretty much down to the end, taking a left onto Tango. We'll take Tango across the apron, and we'll work our way around the back of the south terminal to park up, expecting at the moment to stand Alpha 27.
Ground American 980 on Mike for Tango 12.
American 980 ground, taxi Mike, Lima 3 to 1.
Mike, Lima 3 to 1. Good morning, ground Delta 2378, 4 south, whiskey, taxi.
Delta 2378 ground, runway 9 left at Mike 2, taxi via Lima, hold short of Lima 3.
Delta 2378 going to 9 left at Mike 2 via Lima to hold short of Lima 3.
Okay, so we're just approaching here onto stand Alpha 27, just off on the left. Start slowing the aircraft up, and we'll take the lights off here as well. APU is available. Making a left turn here onto the bay. Looks like we're between a 320 there and a 73.
Ground Delta 560 is crossing 8 right on Delta Foxtrot to 3 north.
Delta 560, landing ground, Foxtrot 23.
Foxtrot 23, thanks, Delta 560.
Just keeping the aircraft nice and slow here as we come onto our marks. And park brake is set on. We'll take the APU bleed air on here as well. APU is available. We can shut down the engines.
Spirit 387, monitor on 100.3.
A little bit tricky there on the click spot. Shut down on number 1.
That's right, 1.
Fox to 1, Delta 690.
And same there on number 2. So we do have 2 good shutdowns. The seatbelt signs can come off. Get the lights on here as well. Just waiting on the slides.
Uniform Lima to 2, Delta 1509.
We'll assume the slides have been disarmed. And the beacon is off. We'll get the fuel pumps off. We'll just leave the left inner there for the APU.
Ground Delta 1183, joining Foxtrot for 5.
Delta 1183.
Fuel pumps are selected off. Transponder
Fox to 5, Delta 1183.
is selected off. Running through the parking checklist, the APU bleed is on. Engines are off. Seatbelt signs are off. Emergency exit lights are set as required. Fuel pumps are off. The park brake is set, and that is the parking checklist complete. So there you go, ladies and gents. I do hope you enjoyed another outing in the iniBuilds Airbus A310. I found it to be good fun getting back into the aircraft, refamiliarising myself with the jet and its systems. It was great as well to get that nighttime arrival into Detroit, not something I tend to do all that much of in the sim. Anyway, once again, I do hope you enjoyed the flight. If you did, then please consider giving the video a like. If you'd like to see more content from the channel, then please do consider subscribing as well. And lastly, if you would like to help support the channel further, and you'd like to unlock a few extra benefits as a result, you can do so by becoming a channel member or patron. As usual, a very big thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support. It is thoroughly appreciated. And finally, to all of you, I do hope you're having a great day wherever you are. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.